Welcome back. From empowering communities to advocating for legislative change, our next guest has been a transformative force in New York's social justice landscape. As the leader of strategic consulting firm founded on innovation and community organizing, they have played pivotal roles in campaigns shaping policy and mobilizing action across the state. Joining us now is the founder and CEO of NYC Action Lab Inc, Carlene Pinto. Carlene, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, can you share the inspiration behind founding NYC Action Lab and how its mission has evolved since 2018?
Yes, thank you so much. So, I, like many New Yorkers, have been born and raised here in the city, and whether it be socioeconomic challenges I faced trying to go away to college, attending a SUNY, whether it was, local community issues that I saw not getting enough strategic support across institutions. I, from 2012 through 2018, had worked really closely in community. So I had been at the Riverside Church supporting a lot of their mission and social justice programming. 2015 through 2018, I had had the honor of working with the New York Immigration Coalition. And coming off of the heels of the Trump presidency 1.0, I saw a lot of fatigue across strategic organizers. I saw a lot of folks looking to turn their protest into policy reform. And I founded New York City Action Lab as a way for me to create a collective of organizers and strategists to really take on the moment. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to do and what we've been able to scale. We've supported frontline campaigns across the country. We've helped strategically support a number of pieces of legislation here in New York State that really just needed an extra push from, a grassroots effort of strategic individuals. So whether that be driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants, whether it be some surrogacy shifts in our legislative and legal spaces here in New York in 2021, or even right now, I am building civic engagement programs in the Bronx because the numbers are telling us that young people in the Bronx are not voting. So we got our start because we wanted to turn protest into policy reform. And here we are taking on Trump 2.0 and really what is a lack of civic engagement among our neighbors.
Now, I want to talk about, as you mentioned, neighbors. I want to talk about, other organizations and individuals. What is the strategy your organization uses to bring these different groups together to enact and drive meaningful social change?
I think a huge part of this moment is how do we intersectionally create the table with the leaders and the consciousness that we need to solve today's problems. And so, whether we talk about what is happening right now around ensuring that we can protect our neighbors from unjust ICE raids, or whether we're talking about trying to make sure that groceries are affordable in our communities, right? We need to have cross cultural conversations, institutional based conversations, and electorally based conversations here in the Bronx if we want to try and get to the core of what are some of our solutions. When we talk about protecting our communities, I mean that I want my neighbors to be able to, live with dignity, regardless of what the housing costs are and whatever their, set income as retired New Yorkers looks like. Or whether I'm talking about my neighbor to the left of me who, has been a New Yorker for over 20 years, whose children are US citizens, but they haven't had the ability to, adjust their status and become a legal permanent resident or a US citizen yet. So it's really about pulling people to the table around what are your concerns as an individual? What are the issues that you're politically or socially fighting around? And all of our issues are interconnected to one another, especially in a place like New York City.
And I kind of want to expand on that since we're talking about, especially New York City. Many New Yorkers are very opinionated. We know this if you're, just in the neighborhood or, you're spending time with family and friends. Everyone has an opinion about the state of the world, especially, just our city. But a lot of the times people are very busy or maybe they're juggling so many different things. With that in mind, how do you kind of encourage people to, get together and mobilize, especially during, intense time of need?
I think a big piece is that I'm never asking anyone to do something that they don't have the capacity or the ability to do. Whether we talk about 30 minutes that you can spend online helping a neighbor with an online application, or whether we're talking about 1 to 3 hours that you may have to show up in a moment of crisis to support your neighbors in maybe clothing distribution or rapid response after we have a terrible fire locally impacting residents or neighbors. We're not asking people to do things that they can't do. And so it becomes really frustrating when you are at home looking at things you cannot change and doing nothing. We propose at New York City Action Lab, and a lot of my colleagues propose, it feels a lot more rewarding when you are doing something, right? You are picking a piece of what are an enormous area, of struggle and or need, and you're like hyper focusing on doing just one tangible act for someone else. I think when we talk about safety and community and all of these, huge issues that have a lot of implications, both personally and communally, a big piece is us re envisioning what that actually means to us and taking a little bit of action. And so, even if it's just, you know what, I haven't voted the last 2 or 3 local cycles, I'm going to make a commitment to figure out who's running for mayor. And I'm going to get involved and I'm going to bring 10 of my friends to vote because that is a tangible thing that I can work on doing individually. Or whether it's, hey, I have some time and energy, I have an area of expertise, maybe I'd be willing to give 30 minutes to an hour to a group of young people, and help educate or share my skill and my craft with the next generation of New Yorkers who really rely on the leadership and the investment of a multitude of generations and communities to continue to invest in them.
Now, your organization collaborates with a diverse range of professionals. Why is diversity essential in advocacy, and how does it strengthen coalition building?
I think when we talk about, our strength being our diversity, I myself am a Cuban Irish New Yorker. So, had we not been in a city like New York, where we are so culturally and racially and religiously diverse, I wouldn't be here. And so, when I think about so many of the intersectional issues that pushed me to this particular moment in time where I myself am taking on a role as being a change maker, it is so critical to me to look to my left and to my right and make sure that those leaders standing to my left and my right represent identities, cultures, religions, backgrounds that I don't personally represent. When I think about passing a policy or a law or aligning support to get someone elected to be everyone's leader in office, it's so important that that person is culturally competent, that that person can speak to me as a native born New Yorker, someone impacted by the criminal justice system, someone who grew up in generations of poverty, that you can speak to me the same way that you can speak to another New Yorker whose story might be completely different than mine. And so, particularly because a lot of our campaigns are around racial justice, particularly we've served countless families who have lost loved ones to police violence. Those families impacted are usually Black, Latino, they're indigenous based, and so representation is critical. And so whether we talk about investing our time and energy in communities that are most impacted, whether we talk about the diversity and leadership among the people that we choose to build coalition with, you will see that we are practicing what we're preaching. And it's so important that the people we work with are reflective to the communities that we're serving, and we're culturally competent to be able to serve those communities. For example, during Trump's first, presidential, term with us, one of his first executive orders was the travel ban that we know was a Muslim ban. I am not a Muslim New Yorker. I lean deep into community with my Muslim brothers and sisters, and I supported them with the tools and resources that they needed to lead. Right? If we have 10, 20, 30,000 New Yorkers coming out, I have no problem making sure that it's safe, that we have permits or we have press. But those folks speaking on the mic, those directly impacted New Yorkers need to be Muslim. Those directly impacted New Yorkers need to be people who are directly impacted by those executive orders that are limiting the basic civil rights of their entire community. And so, yeah, I think in a moment where we're seeing a lack of care and intentionality from our federal administration, limiting executive orders, diversity, equity, and inclusion, New Yorkers need to remain steadfast that we are who we are because of the cultural, racial, and religious diversity of our constituents and our communities.
And I really want to point out that I love kind of how you're talking about just uplifting the voices of the people who need to be heard at the moment. I think it really shows what it takes to be a really good ally, just because you're helping and you could help raise someone else's voice instead of speaking for them. I think that's so important, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that that is something that your organization definitely works to do and ensures that people feel heard and seen. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes, of course. And a big piece is that we're actively, consistently building our partners and our allies. And so, just sharing that we have a Bronxite that's running for mayor here in New York City. His name is Reverend Michael Blake. And I've worked with him on the front lines for over a decade. I have been at a protest for Eric Garner in 2016 when I had been targeted by law enforcement. And Reverend Michael Blake and Senator Gustavo Rivera were at that protest with me and other New Yorkers, right? And so I am making it my point this next electoral cycle to do my best in mobilizing folks in the Bronx. And because of ranked choice voting, you have the ability to select five of your top candidates for mayor, right? And so I really am doing my best to talk to New Yorkers. If folks see Reverend Michael Blake out on the campaign trail, please tell him what you're looking for in a mayoral candidate, right? He is literally on his listening tour right now because we need all hands on deck if we're going to be able to build the community engagement and the civic engagement that New York needs to be able to withstand the next 4 years.
Well, Carlene, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I also want to thank you for the work that you're doing in the community to kind of help, again, as I mentioned, ensure that New Yorkers feel seen and heard. The work that you're doing is not easy, so it definitely deserves being highlighted and noted. So once again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
For more information, you can visit the website at nycactionlab.com.